Spox are a leading UK and now global company providing custom brand kits, whether that is clothing or socks. They are with you every single step of the way by bringing your idea to light. They exclusively work with fitness communities, business communities in the UK and worldwide. To check out everything that they do, head over to www.spox.uk.
Properties changed my life, changed my family's life. I know that if I can do it, I've got dyslexia and I was, lucky if I was hitting C grades in school. So if I can manage to get myself into a secure position, provide for my family in a way that I'm really comfortable with, then absolutely anybody can.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Master Your Life Beyond the Boardroom. I am your podcast host, Luke Beastall, and yes, we have another powerhouse guest in with us today online. His name is Rob. He is actually Irish, but he is living currently in Scotland. So it's quite an interesting one, that one right there. But he's been living there for the past 17 years. His roots, he's built up a very, very, I'd like to say successful life, and we'll go into what that successful life means, what it looks like, what it feels like. But just to give you context, Rob had faced a lot through his years growing up with dyslexia. He had been through a lot of what is, I guess, the family generation thing where they want you to have a good education, a good job, and he kind of found himself in healthcare. And the healthcare was the physio, and he knew deep down, and I know you guys will relate to this, hence the reason you're listening to this episode and other episodes. He knew something, there was more in there. He hit the glass ceiling. What do I do? He actually taken, after a while, saved up, took a trip, got that plane ticket to Thailand, could call it a soul-searching experience. He landed on a book. This one book, I always say this one conversation can change everything. This one book changed a lot for Rob, which was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Is that what it's right, Rob?
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is it Robert? Who's the author?
It's Robert Kiyosaki.
That's it, Kiyosaki. Yeah, Robert Kiyosaki. Yeah. And then he just delved into self-improvement, personal development, and he's now into real estate. So it's going to be an amazing story. I'm so excited to have him on. He absolutely aligns with what we're trying to do here. So, Rob, look, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Welcome to our podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Luke. Yeah, appreciate the invite, and it's good to be here. I'm excited about the chat.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Obviously, we was chatting a little bit beforehand. I mean, this always seems to happen where we just get chatting. It's like, no, we've not recorded it because there were so many good bits. But if people are coming in here, obviously right at the beginning, could you just let them, our audience, know just a little bit about what it is that you do, today, where you're at right now?
Yeah, sure, of course I can. And we'll probably talk a lot around about it, but where I am at the moment is, so I run a property business, which is an investment business. So I guess it has two avenues to it. One where we have a portfolio building service. So if somebody wants to get into real estate, wants to put together a portfolio to help to support their lifestyle, support their family, we'll help them put that together. And the other side of that is we have a fixed return model that we work on. So if somebody has capital that's sat and they don't have the time to action that, or they don't have the knowledge to action it themselves, they'll pass that capital across to us and we'll put it to work, and we will use that to then provide them a secure fixed return. That's all done legally and through the kind of solicitors and everything, so it's very much set in stone and secured to them. So we do that as a kind of a passive income model for them. So that's the two kind of avenues that we work on.
That's so okay then. So I'm really sort of intrigued. I like this portfolio thing as well. Obviously the capital thing's good because obviously you're allowed to take off a little bit of pressure, but also let the money move around and stuff. But the portfolio, if someone was sort of like thinking about, maybe I've got a few rentals, or I'm into property, or maybe I'm thinking or considering it. What made you decide to kind of bring that model into your business about the portfolio? What was the main reason for that?
Well, yeah, so there's two models basically to try and facilitate the opportunity to invest for various people at different levels, I suppose. Where I guess it came about was, I think you touched on that my background is healthcare, and there was sort of a pivotal moment where my business has kind of evolved over time where I've done different things and I've kind of arrived now at this portfolio building and passive investment model. But how I arrived there was about 5 years ago now. I had a guy who came in to see me, and he was in his kind of late 50s, and he was a high level manager in a bank. Really good job. Both his kids were in private school. His wife didn't have to work. They both drove a Mercedes, and they had the big fancy house.
Right.
And he had a stroke, and then 2 months later had a heart attack. And all of a sudden he couldn't work anymore, and the bank was coming for the house, and he had to sell the car. The two kids had to come out of private school. His wife had to go back to work, and like his whole kind of rug had been pulled out from under him. His whole world had changed. And I was sitting there thinking, this guy's done nothing wrong. He's, if anything, he's done all the right stuff. He's done everything that he was supposed to do, and he's just been dealt a really crap hand. And my first thought was like, oh my God, this can't happen to me. I need to make sure that the family are supported if I get hit by a bus. So I need to put the skids under this property thing big time. But the other thing was like, if I'm thinking this, then there's going to be way more people than there is not out there who are going to be in the same boat, who are just so reliant on their kind of 9 to 5. And if something happens to them, then the bills don't get paid. So they lack that security. The biggest gap that I know that we've spoken about this as well is that what I view in terms of the gap in the wealth, everyone talks about the rich and the poor and the gap that's there. I identified what I call the gap in the wealth, which is between the wealthy and the well off. And I call well off just, you're able to work, you're able to earn an income, and you're not being supported by somebody else. If you have the ability to earn, you have the ability to change your stars, is my kind of view on it.
Yes.
By looking at that demographic, people are exposed because they don't have the financial knowledge how to invest, but also it's not something that's supported. Because if you look at the wealthy people, they're surrounded by financial advisors and fund managers and asset managers, and there's all these people around whose job it is just to make these wealthy people more wealthy. Care about the average person because they make their money off the fees. So
Makes
they're
sense.
investing
Yeah,
these
percentage.
large lump sums, and they make 1% off the transaction, which pays their wages and kind of pays for their, board meeting in, the Bahamas. Whereas the average person is dealing with much smaller amounts. If you look at these big wealth generating businesses who deal with the kind of 1%, the first question is what's your net worth and how much can you invest and leave there and not have to worry about, not have to touch. That's not a conversation that the average person can entertain, because the average person is probably nose to the grindstone, might have a really good business that they're working on, but they're so busy putting their time into the business to make sure that it keeps going, paying the bills at the end of the month, that even if they have a small, modest amount that's left over, they don't have the time to do anything with it, nor do they have the time to invest in getting education to figure it out for themselves. So we kind of sit in this area to try and basically facilitate investment for these people, either by if they have a little bit more, we'll help them to build the asset base for themselves. But again, the reason we have this kind of 2 avenue model is because not everyone has that amount sitting there that they can just get straight into property. They might have a smaller amount, but they can pass capital to us, and we can either invest it on their behalf, or we can syndicate it with other funds, and we can do various things so they can still get good returns from their money, and then they can use those returns to gradually start to build it up. So it gives them an avenue, it gives them access, and it gives them that passive income, and it puts their money to work so that it's not just withering away in a savings account. So it's to try and give these people a leg up. It's to try and kind of facilitate that for them.
Yeah, it's. I think I love the part where you have sort of come into the market as well, Rob. So I've got to ask this question because I'm sure some people will be like, nodding their heads and listening to this and being like, I really like this. I like this guy, I like what he's saying. Because I think that the sort of question that sort of comes around is like, where do I start with this? Like, what would it take for me to start if I was to be looking into this? Because maybe they are looking at a passive income, or maybe they are looking at sort of to generate money to maybe start their own business, but they haven't got the funds there just at the minute.
Well, I suppose it depends what you mean. If they're looking to do it themselves and they don't know anything about property, then you start small and gradually build it up. And I suppose we can talk a bit about how I've kind of done it myself and how I've kind of landed to here. Because there is a kind of a growth story there where you kind of start off not knowing very much and you have to kind of build that experience and so on. But if it's in terms of getting invested and just getting off the mark and getting going ASAP, if they reach out to me, or not even necessarily my business, but someone in this kind of area who does similar, it's very easy to get started. All you need to do is have that conversation and outline what it is that you're looking to achieve, because what you're looking to achieve could be completely different to what somebody else is. Somebody could be saying, right, okay, I retiring and I just want to supplement my income, or somebody else could be like, you know what, I want to build something that I can hand over to the grandkids, or somebody else could be, just all I want is a little bit extra that pays for the family holiday every year, so I don't have to worry about that, or it brings in the extra around about Christmas time, so I don't have to worry about the Christmas presents. That's taken care of. It can be small things, it could be large things. The whole ethos of it, though, is that it's designed around about what you want or what you need, and once it's started, you can pivot and deviate and you can grow it. But it's just getting off the mark is the first thing. So getting started in terms of that passive investment or that portfolio building side of things is as easy as a conversation, and just getting things moving. But I mean, I'm more than happy to talk through, if people want to just get into property themselves, I can say, talk a bit about where I've come from and how I've done it.
Yeah, I think you've said something there though, Rob, that most people avoid. And I think it's a message that's so simple that probably people need to actually really sort of feel and understand a lot more and just let it sink in, is that have that conversation. That's the easiest way to get started. I think obviously we're so, information orientated, which I'm not saying information is not power and stuff like that, but what I'm saying is we're searching, we're scrolling, we're asking ChatGPT left, right, and center, but it sort of confuses everybody when, if you want to get started, it's as simple as like what you said, just have that conversation with somebody, obviously, know what it is that you want, find out what it is you want. If it is this, like what you said, retirement, build this part, go on this holiday, have properties, whatever it may be, expand the portfolio. I think that's sort of a really, again, I know it's simplified, but it's a message that
it's simplified as well, but I think you sort of touched on as well, why I'm sat here is I'm sat here because, and I say this all the time, I'm a bang average guy, I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I was just a guy who decided he wanted a bit more and took action on it. And when you're looking at like a mentor, or when you're looking to get started, don't look at the millionaire in the Pacific on his yacht, because that's not tangible. That's a million miles from where you're starting. You want to look at the guy who's one or two rungs above you on the ladder, who's close enough that he can actually throw his hand down and pull you up, as opposed to someone who, if you look at Donald Trump or Jeff Bezos or any of these kind of multimillionaires, they're millionaires now, but when they were back starting out, that's decades ago. So, the economy and everything moves on. So a lot of where they started from is not necessarily relevant now today, because the same environment doesn't exist. So as much as it's very distant in terms of that sort of lofty goal, it's also just distant in terms of, it's not tangible to that mentor, if you like, anymore, because they're looking down. They might pass on some really good information, but the information could well still be, way up here compared to what you're looking for. So if your mentorship or your kind of guide into it should be tangible too. So you kind of have to just be sensible about that, and kind of look for base hits and not home runs necessarily in the first instance.
Yeah, I think that's a really great place to start, because, I mean, could I ask you, did you feel that when you first started out, you were sort of chasing something that was quite far-fetched? Or was you sort of chasing that Jeff Bezos style, or was you very sort of humble and started and looked at somebody just a couple of sort of steps ahead? Or
Well, in a way, I think I'm kind of lucky, right? Because I'm not a very flashy guy. I never wanted the Lamborghini, and I never wanted the yacht in the Pacific, or I never wanted any of these fancy things. I'm very happy in a plain T-shirt and pair
yeah,
of
yeah.
jeans. I'm not about all the flashy stuff. My goals have always been sort of lifestyle orientated. I wanted time with the family, experiences with the family. I wanted security and the ability to do nice things, spend time. That's kind of what my vision and goals have always been around. So I think when I landed back and started pursuing the sort of property stuff, I'd already kind of identified property as the way that I wanted to go about things, because I kind of understood that a little bit. It kind of excited me. I started out not having a clue what I was going to do. I started out just going online and finding networking meetings and going along to them and standing in the corner of the room surrounded by all these people who knew more than me and who were already active. And being okay with somebody coming up to me and saying, you know, what's your name and what do you do? And you're like, I don't know. I just want to start. And actually, if you're brave enough to put yourself out there and to sort of hold your hand up and say, I don't know what I'm doing here, but I want to start because I want to be like you guys. Actually, a lot of people are willing to help you and are willing to kind
Yeah.
of have that conversation and pass that on. And that was where I started. So I went to networking meetings and I just started doing wee bits and pieces for these investors who were already active. I started kind of doing what they call sourcing, although I didn't know it was sourcing at the time and I wasn't registered and I was doing it all the wrong ways. But I was just basically finding these deal opportunities, doing all the research and finding my feet doing this, but then selling the opportunities on to these people who were already active, and they'd pay me a finder's fee and then I'd collect those and stack them up. And then I moved from there into doing a little bit more. So I then started doing project management where I'd manage the trades. And so I'd find the deal, put the trades in, oversee the refurb, all the way to putting a tenant in it at the far end. And I'd be
Ah.
collecting fees for that as I was going. And that was a bit more. And then gradually these fees kind of added up to the point that I was able to kind of put some in and get a property for myself. And then then it was off and I just built it up from there.
So everything sort of like happened step by step, bit of like compounding effect. But I want to ask, because I know this is like a really random question: did you rock up to those networking meetings in a t-shirt and jeans, or did you go in a suit?
I don't think I went in a suit. No, I think I probably wore chinos. I probably was somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, no. The only reason I ask is because people sort of feel that, when they go into property. I bet you just sort of shirt, tie, briefcase sort of style, for a lot of people. They
No,
don't feel like they fit in,
yeah, I hear that's so funny. I don't think I've been asked that before, but so yeah, I think no. So looking back now that I think about it, I did. I had a collar and a shirt. I didn't have a tie. I was a shirt and I was chinos and I was shoes. That was kind of what I rocked up as, and I kind of that was probably as kind of comfortable as I was being, because I kind of, it's funny. You see all these people on Instagram and something, and it's they're posting with the champagne glass and the suit,
I know, this is what I
and
mean.
then you have somebody below say, Just enjoy the wedding, mate. Like just because it's not authentic. It's not who you are, and it wasn't who I was. So I did kind of throw on the shirt and stuff just because I wanted people to take me seriously. So there
Sure.
was kind of projecting that, but equally I didn't want to be something that I wasn't. I didn't want to rock up in the three-piece suit with the shoes, and then someone says, "What do you do?" And I'm like, "Well, actually, I've got no properties at all, and I'm just starting out, and I'm standing here with all my makeup on because I just wanted you just to notice me." That's there's probably somewhere in the middle is key. I'm sure I heard Steve Bartlett say that as well. He was doing interviews recently and he was saying, somebody comes in and they're in the big flashy suit and whatever, and they start talking and immediately you kind of think this isn't who they are. But equally, if somebody comes in and they're in, the coffee stained shirt and, they're all kind of mucky. You don't really want that either. So it's somewhere in the middle. You just want someone who presents as if they, give a toss, but someone who's not trying to put themselves out into something that they're not.
I think that's good, the authenticity piece. But I just wanted to ask that because I think, I mean, I'm just talking from like, I know people obviously will see online when you say the word financial or investor or real estate investor, or, it's that look, isn't it? It's that judged look. Oh, they must be collar shirts and all that. But you're saying you're the bang average guy. So that's that you're showing a different way of this sort of life that you can create.
This is the thing, and this is why so many people look at this kind of thing and think that it's beyond them. They think that, this isn't for
Yes.
me. How could it possibly, because I don't fit that demographic? And it's just that's not real. The tools are there. You just have to know how to use them. And far more people have the facility to invest and to change their outlook and to change what the shape of their life could be. They just don't know where to start and don't know how to do it. And I'm very passionate about this. I'm an evangelist about property because property's changed my life. It's changed my family's life.
Yes.
So I know that if I can do it, like you said, I've got dyslexia, and I was lucky if I was hitting C grades in school. So if I can manage to get myself into a secure position, and provide for my family in a way that I'm really comfortable with, then absolutely anybody can. They just need to know what to do.
Yeah, this is great, and I think just you sharing that about yourself, and obviously, again, what people perceive it as, and then what you've been through, you're sort of rewriting that conditioning, but in a different, say, look, that's not true, that's not real. This is what I've done. Just out of curiosity, how long have you been in real estate now, Rob? Is it 5 years or longer? I guess it's been
No,
longer.
it's longer than that.
Yeah.
It's close on 10 years now. But I
Wow.
mean,
Okay.
it's close on 10 years, but I think it was about 3 years in before I bought a deal for myself because I had to build that up. And even when I started out, it took me 6 months before I even was successful in getting a fee drop into my account for, doing that kind of finder's fee thing. So it was a lot of hustle and a lot of kind of tenacity to kind of stick to it and put in the hours and learn and get myself to a position where I was able to find a deal that was worth selling to somebody that somebody actually wanted and was able to then say, yeah, okay, no, that's worth that. Here's the fees for finding it. So it's definitely a learning journey. And I'm quite aware as well that, when I was doing that, I would have been in my sort of like mid to early late 20s. Whereas, at that point, I didn't have any kids. I had just met my now wife, but I didn't have a huge number of responsibilities that people who are later in life do. So it is a little bit more difficult as you go on because you have more demands on your time. As you'll know as well, you've got kids just
Yeah.
like I do. And you've got the responsibilities of the mortgage and everything else, or you have like the 9 to 5 job that you're really busy, or you run your own business and it takes all your time. So there's these things that are in the way. But my point is that within all of those time constraints, it is still possible. And you don't necessarily have to spend all of that time that I did because there's people like me out there that just reach out and have a conversation and you can get on that treadmill at a sprint as opposed to having to build it up from a walk.
Yeah. This is I love this because this is exactly. It's weird that you said 10 years. This is what actually. I mean, obviously, the point of this recording. I mean, I'm 10 years in business in July, and I said this. I was saying this exactly to the guys now that are sort of in this transitional, going from employed to self-employed, and saying, look, I'm here to fast track it in a way. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've sought out loads of information. I've been through multiple platforms, mentorships, you name it. So that's really. I just want the guys to check in and just understand that real human experience, and having conversations can really help speed this life that you want to create up, if you just reach out.
Absolutely. And it is important, especially in property, because there's plenty of room for mistakes if you don't know what you're doing, and if you make a mistake in property it can be a big expensive mistake to make. So I put in my time working alongside other people. And so I sort of, I cut my cloth building a lot of experience. And, I recognize that I'm in a very privileged position now where I know a lot more than I would have way back then when I was starting. And it can be hugely intimidating for people in their mid 30s or mid 40s to get started because there is a lot more jeopardy because you've got kids, you've got the mortgage, you have, you're supporting the family, and it there's a lot more on the line. So actually, you can be very afraid to make those mistakes, and that's even more the reason why people should be reaching out to people like myself. And I'm saying not reaching out to myself, reaching out to anybody who does something similar to what I do, because I'm not here to say, oh, get in touch with me and I'll change your life. It's, anyone who is a couple of rungs ahead, who, you have an interest in and you want to better your position or give yourself a bit more freedom. It's there to be done, but you have to make that first step and have that conversation, because that's how you start to unpick that puzzle. It's possible, but you have to move, you have to start.
So what's that's it, you have to start. What's been one of the biggest mistakes that you've made in the past 10 years in real estate?
So one of the biggest mistakes that I've made, and to be fair, a lot of business is about managing risks, and I tend to be very good at managing risks. But one of the mistakes that I've made, and it didn't hit me too hard, thankfully, because I had put the processes in place to mitigate these things. But I had somebody came and brought me a property which was painted up to be all singing and all dancing as an investment deal, and I had a look over it. not as good a look as I should have, because I trusted the survey, but I didn't get a survey of my own. And I went to my broker and I said, is this all singing and all dancing like it's supposed to be? They said, yeah. And I was like, right, good enough for me. Let's pull the trigger. Let's go. And so we bought it, took it on. And then lo and behold, when we tried to remortgage it, it turns out that it was a completely different construction type than it was made out to be. And that meant that it was unmortgageable. So that basically meant that my exit normally is to buy something at a lower level or at a discount, make my money off the middle, and refinance it to then hold and put a tenant in. So I get the cash flow from the rental income. I get the cash out that I've invested from the forced depreciation, and then I hold the asset long term, which then accumulates in terms of capital appreciation. So that didn't work for that model because I now couldn't refinance because the mortgage lenders weren't happy with the construction type. So that could very easily have been a nightmare for somebody who wasn't prepared with different exit strategies. But for me, I just flipped it straight into auction and somebody bought it and I got my money out and it was on to the next. So there's a big lesson there because I was kind of getting a bit lax. I was, comfortable. I'd done a couple of these deals now and I was kind of getting into the flow, and I looked over something that I should have looked a bit deeper into, and that could have scuppered me, but it didn't because I was well versed and well prepared. But it was definitely a wake up call.
Yeah, I like this, and fair play to you as well, Rob, the way you mitigated it. Obviously, you're very sort of, like I say, process driven on that. I can see that being a catastrophe for some, obviously, with that happening. I mean, I've heard a few things happen, not from my own personal experience, just from a few friends of mine that are in real estate, or they've got, like I say, rentals and stuff like that. So, for you in terms of like, because I'm feeling like you're very disciplined. Obviously, I know that you take calculated risks as well and stuff like that. Where did you sort of learn this skill from? Has it always been ingrained in you from such an early age? Did your family like bring that in, or have you had to sort of learn and build that skill?
Well, I've always been very driven and I've always had that sort of tenacity about me where if I decide that I want something, I kind of go very hard at it, and to the point that I can sometimes be a little bit too kind of blinkered and too focused. And I sometimes I need family to kind of say, actually, Rob, there's other stuff going on. You need to just rein back in. Yeah, I think, well, my dad was always self-employed, and his whole ethos was he wanted to hold the reins and be in control of, starting up a business, running the business, and taking holidays when he didn't want to be told what to do by a big bad boss. So he would have always been kind of entrepreneurial from that perspective, and I guess that probably rubbed off on me seeing that, and I probably have that entrepreneurial gene in me because I was always wanting that little bit more, and I do always have that sort of itch to kind of be like doing something productive. So that is definitely ingrained in me. But I think it's funny, he was very much, I've been absolutely busting myself to make sure to provide for the family. You should go and get a professional job that doesn't require all that you can be in and you can do your 9 to 5, and then you have, your evenings and weekends free, you can relax and stuff. That was what I did. I went to university, I got the job, landed in a job in the NHS, and that was grand. And then I very quickly realized that actually I'm not happy doing this. I was like, this isn't enough for me. I need more than this because I want more than this. I don't want the kind of, and I don't mean this to sound bad, but it's like I don't want the kind of average life. I want that little bit more. I want if my kids want something, I'm not going to spoil my kids, but if my kids want something, I want to have the facility to provide that. I don't want to have to say to them, actually, nah, we can't do that because we can't afford to do that, or we don't have the facility to do that. I very much want to be able to do that for them.
Yeah, do you know what? I think, Flyer, I think that's really interesting that obviously your dad was a business owner, didn't want to work for anyone else, but then got you to go in that sort of like loop. Obviously, you had soon realised going in it, but then again, maybe it was a learning for you to know that wasn't a place and space that you wanted to be in.
Yeah, it's a funny sort of like, well, so I've kind of done a little bit of looking back through this and like how did I wind up where I am today? So my granddad on my dad's side was like back in that generation. You had a job and you stayed in that job for 40, 50 years and you
Yeah.
retired, and that was, that was how things were. So he did that. He was in, I'm sure he was in sales or something, and he was a couple of years out from retirement. And back in the day, the company got into trouble and they raided the pension fund and then liquidated the company, and he was left very close to retirement with no pension, and what was he going to do? So very lucky my dad was in a position that he was just starting out. He was like, you know what, that's never going to happen to me. I'm going to be the master of my own destiny. I'm going to be my own boss. And so he was able to then bring my granddad in, and they kind of worked on the business together and kind of built that up. And then he was like, you know what, running a business is really hard, and if I'm not working on the tools here, then the money doesn't come in. So Rob, what you need to do is you need to not make the mistake that he did, not make the mistake that I did. You need to do this.
Right.
And it's kind of been this kind of evolution, whereas yeah, I was in the secure job and everything like that, but equally I don't think at any point over like that period anyone in my family had really considered or was really aware of like asset based or passive income, or how to invest in that style of money making, for lack of a better term. So when I discovered that, I was like, you know what, actually this is the best of both worlds, if you like, because you can have the secure job or you can have the busy business that you is your baby and you make, but actually when you can start paving the way for these asset based kind of passive income streams to trickle in and add a little extra and add a little extra, and then you reinvest those and it adds a little extra, and then those streams become, a much heavier flow, and then all of a sudden it takes over from your other income, and it makes money when you're asleep, or it makes money when you're on the beach, or when you're on your holidays, or when you're off doing whatever it is you want to do. So I think you start off having those two avenues, but with a view that ultimately the passive stuff takes over, and that's how you support yourself through retirement and support your family with those extra bits and pieces. We're both based in the UK, and I'm certainly very aware that the pension situation is going to be completely different by the time I get to 67, 68, or probably by the time I get there, it's going to be 70 something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do I want to be working 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, when I'm 72 or 75? No, I don't. Nor do I really have any faith in the state pension really being available to me, because the squeeze on that is getting tighter and tighter, and I reckon it's probably going to be means tested by the time I get to there. So anyone who's really tried to build themselves a career, who's tried to build themselves into that kind of middle class life where you have enough to get by and you can have some nice things, I think they're going to be looked at and be like, actually, you're doing far better off than somebody else is. So actually your pension's then going to be a lot less, because it'll be, and it might not pan out that way. I don't know. I'm not taking that risk. So I do have that element that he had, where I want to be the master of my own destiny. I want to have
Yeah.
ownership of, this portfolio that'll support my family when I retire, or if I pop my clogs early, it'll still be there to support the kids and the family. It's security. Money, generally speaking, is a stress to people. So money is a tool, and there's people all over the globe that are hanging by a thread because they're struggling to make bills at the end of the month and they don't know what they're
Yeah.
going to do. And it's majorly stressful for people. So removing that stress, you do that by providing security, by providing small little bit extra that you don't have to worry about, and that little bit extra builds into a little bit extra. And when you don't have money worries, so much stress is alleviated from people, and people are actually free to relax and enjoy life a little bit more, as opposed to being constantly worried about, one of the kids has a birthday party coming up, what are we going to buy for them, what are we going to do? It's simple things like that shouldn't be stressful, and that's not what life is about. I firmly believe that the average person can achieve affluence, and they just need to know what way to use that tool that money is.
Yeah, I mean, you're saying some great points here, Rob, just especially for the guys listening. There's a lot of value here. There's a lot of I think that people will be expanding the mind a little bit in a way, okay, not really heard it put, because it's the way you're actually articulating it that will actually help people understand. You're meeting them at a level that I think a lot of people sort of come to. But I think the sort of how you've kind of come into this and where your mind's at, and when you've spoken about obviously the general stuff with pension, it's just going to grow more and more. Like, you'll be older and older before you even get access to it, and there'll be so many tax things. And it's just wishing your life away. I can't wait till I'm retired. You always hear those sort of things with people saying all this stuff. You're sort of, like you say, you're not taking the chances on that. You're like working in the now, being present to create the future, but actually enjoying what life is right now.
Absolutely.
Which I think is, by the way, really, really key for people in any walk of life.
It's a bit like what you were talking about in terms of risk management. Like, I could do nothing at all, and I could sit here on the assurance that there'll be a pension at the end. And I mean, you pay into a pension, you get your state pension and whatever else. But am I willing to risk that not being the case? And when I'm older and I don't want to work or I don't want to do whatever, don't want it to be out of my hands. I want to have done things now to make sure that my family is supported. I mean, I heard something recently that they're debating. I think there's some change due for 2027 to the pension scheme where private pensions are going to be subject to inheritance tax. So that means that if you've paid into a private pension through your work and you're unlucky enough to die before you've spent it all, your kids are going to get charged inheritance tax on that money that you've put away.
Yeah, it's
And I was
mad.
like, this is absolutely insane. Like, not only have I done you the courtesy of dying before I used it all, you're also now going to tax my kids. I was like, no, it's so.
I've
Anyway,
heard that. Yeah.
a wee bit of a tangent there, but basically, it's not. I guess I don't want that on my conscience. I want to be free of all that worry. So this is what property and what sort of building this asset base means to me, and why I want to be able to give it to other people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, did you, just out of, again, curiosity on this, Rob, did you find, because obviously, with your dad, I can see obviously you obviously got a great family relationship. We could tell obviously you looked up to him, and obviously he built obviously a great business, it sounds like. Did you get any resistance from family, or did you feel alone in any part when you decided to go into real estate, coming away from the 9 to 5?
No, I didn't. To be fair, I mean, I'm very lucky. I've got a very supportive family.
That's
Still
good.
I've both my parents have always been very supportive, and we, they both worked very hard. We never wanted for anything growing up. Um, I think they were a bit surprised when I suppose for context, right? So I was working away after I got my degree, and I was really disappointed with what my paycheck was when I landed into work. And I managed to last about 2.5 years working before I just got really disenchanted. And I was like, there has to be more than this. This isn't going to get me the life that I want. And I sort of threw my hat at it, and I took the money that I've been saving for a mortgage and I legged it off to Thailand for, traveling around. And my parents were a bit like, yeah, you had a good job and you've been saving and you're on your way to getting a mortgage and you've been doing really well, and are you sure that you want to do that? And so there was probably a little bit of uncertainty there, but they never stopped me.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
I think they probably recognized that, I wanted that a little bit more, and I'm not quite sure how I was going to necessarily get more when I went to Thailand, but I think I just needed that wee bit of a breakaway. But I guess this is an important point. So I went away to Thailand, and I basically spent all my savings on, cocktails on the beach and scuba diving. And I was kind of sitting there on the beach, and I was acutely aware that I was just draining these funds. And I was like, this is brilliant. This is fantastic, but it's not going to last forever, because there's money going out. There's nothing coming in. What am I going to do? I can't go back to the way things were. And this is where I was going through Bangkok airport, and I nipped into a bookshop to see what I was going to read on the next beach. And I found that book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, that you were talking about. And I read it in a day. I was like, I'm blown. This is what I'm looking for. Read it again in the second day, and that was the kind of eye opener for me. And I immediately just started kind of deep diving anything I could find in terms of books that were, finance, self development. And by the time I came back from Thailand, I hit the ground saying, right, I have an idea what I'm doing here. I just have to find the avenue that's going to get me there. So that was kind of the turning point for me, I suppose. I can't remember how I ended up on this tangent, but I guess that's what it was. So basically, when I landed back, I started with nothing. I didn't have any money. I started out having just spent it all. on the other side of the world. So when I landed back, it wasn't like I landed back and there was like a lump sum of cash that I could start with. It was basically starting from a complete blank slate saying, okay, how am I going to do this? Finding out, where I could speak to people that were already doing it and wangling my way in and building it that way.
Yeah, this is, yeah, go on, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and I think that's an important point because people listening to this should be aware that, you can start from having no money at all and it's still possible to get there. But you do just have to start. You have to reach out. You have to, number one, know and believe that it's possible. And that's what I hope people take away from today. If I've done it, I'm dyslexic, I'm, a C student at school, I had no money when I started. People can do it. I can help people do it. It's there to be done. They just have to reach out and they have to take that step.
Yeah, I mean, you're deeply passionate about it, Rob. It's very clear. And I think just to sort of hear that, you broke from the 9 till 5, you decided to go into an environment, spend a lot of money, you save and sit there on a beach, lapping up the sun, to then go through like what I think, I don't know if we said it on this episode, but I know we were talking about before, like the soul search. You start finding out where your path is, where you want. But I think what's really important here is you change your environment, you slow down, you take some space, and then things started to shift. But you did sort of like move towards that, and then that clarity started to come through. So in your sort of line of business now, obviously you've got great discipline. I'm very big on sort of, and the guys will know this listening, is I'm very big on sort of like the personal discipline, sort of blends in with the professional discipline. What do you do sort of outside of work or anything that's not related to professional side of that allows you to test your discipline or challenge it or grow your discipline?
I've kind of done a whole heap of different things in terms of, I've always been sporty. So I played rugby and I played hockey to quite a high level. And then I ended up, I hurt my shoulder. So I retired from rugby, but I took up the gym because the gym and rugby kind of went sort of hand in hand. And I sort of missed that competitiveness of, you're in a league, you go out on a Saturday, you try to win, and I didn't get that from just going to the gym. And I sort of fell into the bodybuilding scene a bit, which is very, very structured and it's very rigorous. And I didn't have the size for bodybuilding. I did a PCA show in Birmingham, and that was the kind of beginners sort of dip your toe in the water, and very quickly then kind of sidestepped into men's physique. And I did that for the kind of prep lasted the best part of about 18 months by the time I did a kind of full cycle, because I started off with the book, and at the time my wife was really supportive as well. She kind of managed the kind of diet thing, but I was hitting the gym 5 days a week, sometimes twice a week, and there was kind of cardio, and then there was sort of HIIT, and then there was your resistance training as well. And it was very much, men's physique is kind of different to bodybuilding, and it's a little bit more about kind of tone and symmetry. So there's kind of posing classes and stuff that kind of go along with that. And so I mean, in order to get down to the levels of kind of body fat that you need for kind of stepping on stage, that takes a lot of discipline, and you are very regimented in terms of how you achieve it. You have to be, because there's not really much room for anything else. And I guess that's part and parcel of how I approach things a wee bit. I am very much, if I want something, I'm very driven. I know that I'm going to do it. And the other thing that I think is quite important when I pick a goal is that I tell people about it.
Yeah, this is good.
Because when I tell people about it, in the back of my mind, I'm like, you've told them that you're going to do this. If you don't follow through and do this, they're going to know he didn't follow through on what he said he was going to do. So one of the things that I'm doing at the moment is I've started to write a book about all this financial literacy and about financial education and about giving tools to the people, the average person, to allow them to change their life and build a life of security for them and their family. But I've told people about it. I've posted on social media about it. I'm telling you about it. And this is going to go out to all your listeners. So because people know about it, there's that level of accountability. And I think that that's really important when you're setting goals. So I'm very much an advocate of, number one, writing things down, but number two, telling people. I mean, you can go a step further, and then if you tell someone and actually say, right, you're going to keep me accountable, and you need to, check in and see how am I getting on with this. I used to do that when it came to the gym. I don't do that at the moment because too many other things going on between kids and the horses and everything else. But yeah, so I mean, I can be really regimented, and I can kind of put the blinkers on and be really focused. That writing the book requires that. That's what I'm doing at the moment. I'm not as heavy in the gym as I used to be. We spoke briefly about the kind of the world of bodybuilding and stuff, and it is very, very intensive. So I did that for a couple of years, and then when my wife got pregnant, we started building a family. I stepped right back from that because, to me, family's everything, and I wanted to be there for my kids, and so they take a lot of my time running around doing bits and pieces with them, which is a lot of fun. But we have stepped out to what was kind of my vision now, is kind of the house in the country with a wee bit of land, and we've got the ducks and the chickens and the cats and the horses and all the stuff that I wanted the kids to grow up with, to have those kind of opportunities. And yeah, so I think you kind of have to be a wee bit focused in order to break free from the 9 to 5. But I think it's really important that you know what you're focusing on. And one of the things that I think it goes back to, I'm also going to be hopefully speaking to kids in schools in the next school year. I've reached out to a couple of different schools to talk to kids about this type of stuff. But
Right.
one of the things that everyone asks teenagers is, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do when you finish school? And they don't know. They're teenagers. They're too busy, running around having a good time and trying their best to focus on what they're being taught in the
Yeah,
classroom.
yeah.
A better question is, what do you want your life to look like when you're 60? Do you want to be lying on a yacht in the Mediterranean, or do you want to have a house in the country with a couple of horses, or do you just want, a house in the estate, but maybe you want to have a villa in Spain that you can go, like, it could be anything. But you need to just have that wee bit of a think and have that wee bit of clarity on, like, okay, what is it that I want to end up at? And then you can aim your compass based on that, because otherwise you're just a bit of a blunderbuss, and you can put your energy into 101 different things, and it's very easy to chase the shiny penny and say, I'm going to do property, but now I'm going to do drop shipping, and now I'm going to do something else, and you kind of end up going nowhere. It's a bit like being on this island and having all these destination islands round about, and you start building a bridge to one, but then you get distracted and build a bridge to the other, and you just end up with a whole heap of half-built bridges that go nowhere. Whereas actually, if you have that clarity of focus and you know where you're going, you can then start to kind of achieve things.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I just want to say this as well, just from what that question there is very powerful. But I think as well, just for a teenager, whether they're 16, 13, 14, whatever age they're at, for them to have that question asked to them, even if at that moment they're like, oh, whatever, I'm just living I don't want to, I don't know. They'll never forget it. It'll be there. They'll remember that. I mean, how many times, there's moments in your childhood, there's moments in, it's reframed differently, but it's got so much, because it'll come at one stage in life when you sort of find out, gosh, I can remember when that guy sort of came in, did it, and he said, yeah, like, what do you want your life to look like when you're 60? Like, you're not going to forget that. You're going to think, gosh, yeah, it's made me, right now is, I want to work towards this. I've got more clarity now, but it's just planting that seed in that moment, I think is so important.
Absolutely. It's just shining a light on it, and the reason that I want to talk to people, to kids around about that kind of age group, is if you talk to any self-made business person or any millionaire, any person who's wealthy, one of the number one things that they will tell you is that they wish they knew about money earlier.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because if you find out about it earlier, it's just that basic, the basic cause and effect of compounding. The earlier you start, very quickly you hit that uplift, and then things skyrocket. But again, it doesn't matter if you're young or if you're in your middle age or whatever you are. You just have to start, because that's how you get to that hockey stick curve, where you get that uplift.
Yeah, I think I mean, I can relate to that, by the way. I mean, I wouldn't say I've like openly spoken to the guys about it on here, but I've had many things, even in business, early on in business, which I wish I'd knew more about the psychology around it, or even literature around the money situation. Because it's not really spoken about in schools. You're not really exposed to it much. I had no money management, even when I played football and stuff like that. Not that it was making lots of money, but it was just no idea, no skills around it. And it's very easy to spend it and lose it. I used to say sort of jokingly, and I'm very talented. Oh, what are you talented at? Spending money, literally.
Yeah.
In that way.
It's one of those things as well, is that, kids look and they see everything online now, and everyone has, the flashy trainers and the flashy cars or the flashy watches. And you see people running around with, that steering wheel photo that has like the BMW thing, and they've got their watch and whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, give me a break. Call me when you switch your phone off at 3 o'clock and you spend your evening with your kids. That's what living is, to me anyway. But they see this, and it's very, very difficult to resist that lifestyle creep of, well, I have to be seen to be doing really well. I have to be seen to be living this really fantastic life, because that's what other people are going to think of me. And the problem with that is that if you buy a Lamborghini, you buy Lamborghini problems, right? You buy the Lamborghini, it's going to cost you $2,000 to change a burst tire, whereas it'll cost you 200 quid to change it on a Renault, right?
Yeah.
So you're not just buying the thing, you're buying the problems that go with it. So if you're not in a position to sustain that, you end yourself up in problems very, very quickly. And that's where credit card companies and payday loan companies and all these people make their money, because they charge a massive amount of interest while you're just trying to keep yourself afloat because of all these expenses. And if you can get in before people land themselves in that problem, it changes lives. It does. There was something else that I was going to say there. In terms of what I call lifestyle creep, it's a fundamental principle of, sort of similar to delayed gratification, but you land a job and you stick at it for a little while, and then the next thing, you're doing well and you get a raise and you get an extra 200 quid coming in every month. It's so easy to just say, oh, brilliant, that's an extra 200 quid. I'm going to move to a bigger flat, or I'm going to get a nicer car, because I've got that little bit extra. I'm doing really well. I'm gonna show people how well I'm doing. But that bigger flat has a higher rent on it, and that new car has a higher car payment on it. So all of a sudden, the extra 200 quid that you had is just gone, and you're no better off, except for your money is now flying out the door without you being able to build anything with it. Whereas actually, what you should do is imagine that little bit extra never existed, put it aside, let it build up into something, invest it so that then pays you back. Once that's built up, it's paying you back, and let that pay your car payments. And all of a sudden, you don't only have a car, you also have a flat that goes up in value that's paying for your car.
Yeah, it's a good way. I think that's I mean, I learned the hard way with when you were just talking back there about companies sucking you up for the interest fees, and you have all these things, and that's where they make the money. I've been in that place as well. Just how you've sort of shared that bit there, I think that's a really smart approach, but it's sensible as well. Like I say, it's mitigating the risk, but it's again not what many people think about. Like you say, they'll want that more this. Oh, I'll get more of that, or I'll look for the next thing to sort of feel better about myself by having a bigger flat, or a nicer car, or whatever it is. If like you say, they've had that bit of a pay increase. I hear that a lot. So I think a lot of people will relate to that.
And the thing is, as well, you can still have more. Like nobody's out here to say you need to live life on the breadline and scrounge for everything. Like you're allowed to go to Starbucks and have coffee. Like you're allowed to do nice things. You just have to be sensible about how you do them, because if you structure it the right way, and if you put your money into assets and you actually have it producing income, and that income pays for the nice dinners and the holidays and whatever else, it's not detracting from your income. It's a secondary thing that's taking care of all the luxuries that you actually want. So it's about building that and structuring that, and knowing how to do that is fundamental in terms of how you build wealth and how you kind of become affluent and give yourself a life that is free of monetary stress, because otherwise you're just constantly flogging yourself and you're dreading the end of the month to see if you're going to have enough money to wait until the next paycheck drops. And what if that direct debit comes out on the 28th and I only get paid on the 29th? What's going to happen if it's all sorts of nonsense. But actually, if you just structure it the right way, it's simple things that you can do to just actually make life much better for yourself. It does need that little bit of discipline, but it's just knowing how to do it.
Yeah, it is. It is a discipline. I have to say that. But no, it is. It's not as hard as probably people may think. Or they might say, oh, like I mean, I have it a lot where I'll have conversations with people, even if it's like starting a fitness journey, or whatever. Oh, I haven't got the time. Like people say, I haven't got the money. When in fact, if they really dig deep on it, slow down, check in, really audit it, look at it, sensibly, but they'll find it. It'll be there somewhere for them to then grow something or look at it as a way, like you say, it might look at a bit of a short term, is this really going to do its thing? But long term, like you say, it pays for itself. It gives you that different part of, I guess, a life that you've been searching for. But Rob, I mean, this is like getting towards the end of the episode, man. I mean, obviously, I think it's a really good sort of concluding bit though, because it's opening people's minds up, especially about what they can do.
You have to choose your hard.
Yeah, I've always said that. Choose your hard. So I want to ask you this question because I think this will be good for you to answer, especially with like the level of discipline you've got. I ask it every single guest. What does mastering your life mean to you, Rob?
Mastering your life is being able to put yourself in a position where you are self-sufficient, you're financially secure, and you don't have monetary worries. Because as much as we hate to admit it, money does make the world go round. Having money makes life secure. It makes things a lot easier. So I think financial security is the key to mastering your life, because when you have financial security, you can make your life whatever you want it to be. You can shape it to be whatever you want it to be. You can give your family, your loved ones, or anyone the handouts or help that they need, that you would want to give them. But if you don't have financial security and if you have financial worries, it becomes very difficult, because if you're worried about money, you're not going to be able to spend money freely to help somebody else or to provide things that you might otherwise for your kids, because you're worried about whether or not you're going to have the facility to pay the bills. So mastering your life is about creating that situation for yourself. And how you do that is you have to start. You have to start getting clear about what you want your life to look like. And you have to start taking steps towards achieving that. And that's just having a look, finding somebody who is doing that thing already, talking to them, speaking to them, learning from them, and also being disciplined and learning about how money works and how finance works, so that you can then start to make small steps, because there's always small steps at the start, but those small steps very quickly add up to a sizable amount, and then you're starting to make real changes to your life, and you can take real ownership of what that looks like. So it's probably a bit of a long-winded answer, but
it is. But it ties well though to sort of what you've shared today. I think a lot of people will definitely feel the financial worry. I mean, especially in the climate that we live in today and what we sort of get exposed to, it's a common thing. I mean, the worries around that. But I think the financial security bit, what you said, just again, the ownership conveys freedom. I've sort of, it's sort of taking ownership of that, knowing that you can do it. There's possibilities out there. Just start small steps. There's a lot of nuggets. There's a lot of things that I think our audience, Rob, will take away.
Yeah, and do you know what is really important as well is that it's okay to admit to yourself that you don't know, because you can't start out knowing everything about where you want to end up, and on that journey you're going to change and pivot along the way. But if you don't know how to start, then you have to reach out and ask. You have to start that conversation and you have to speak to somebody who does know, and make decisions and learn from them, and base things off what you can take on, and go one step at a time. It's not enough to say, I don't know, so I'm going to do nothing. Because if we do nothing, we die. You know, you can tread water and go nowhere, but eventually you're going to get really fatigued and drown. You have to move. Even if you don't know where land is, you start swimming, and you have more chance of surviving that way. Yeah, I always kind of say there's not your fault that life has dealt you a really crummy hand, like that guy from before. It's not his fault that all of these things happened to him. It's terrible that they did, but it's terrible that somebody loses their job, or whatever bad thing happens. But fault and responsibility are two different things. It's not my fault that I lost my job, but it's my responsibility to find another one so that the bills still get paid, and I can still put a roof over my kid's head, type thing. So it's just about taking the responsibility to say, right, what do I want this to look like, and then actively pursuing it by taking steps.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of action in that, the discipline, taking the necessary steps. It's really good what you've said. It's got, even for me, obviously hosting this and hearing what you saying, this, my mind sort of drifts and goes there, and like, gosh, it relates, it hits, and it's going to hit the audience as well. So listen, Rob, I honestly appreciate your time. I appreciate everything you've sort of shared, because I know, again, people are going to be sort of, actually, I know that they're going to want to sort of find out more about what it is that you can offer and what you do. So where can people find you if they was to look?
Yeah, I'm kind of on all social media platforms. So I'm on Instagram is Rolston Real Est, short for estate. I'm on Facebook as Rolston Real Estate. I'm on LinkedIn as Robert Rolston. I'm on Twitter or X as Rolston Real Estate, and my website is www.rolstonrealestate.org. And absolutely reach out to me on any of those platforms. I'm happy to have a chat, because, like I said, I am an evangelist about property and about financial education, and I really think that the average person can do this, because I have, and it's my mission to try and change as many lives as I can.
I think you're going to do it. I absolutely do. And it's great that you're accessible as well. So I don't think anyone's going to miss an opportunity to have that conversation. I think that's really important as well, for the guys listening, is if whatever Rob's shared today on this episode and has sparked something, don't delay, don't wait, just have that conversation. So
it sounds like a really grandiose thing to say, oh, I'm going to change people's lives. I don't, I don't
not
mean it
really
like that.
though. Nah.
But I just mean it because, I'm an average guy. So, it's maybe it can hold up a wee mirror to other people who can see themselves in those shoes. It's not a million miles away. It's within reach. You just have to know what to do.
Yeah, no. That's, again, really good that it's meeting people where they're at as well, and knowing that it's not too, like you said, you've said it before, a couple of steps, not like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 steps
100%.
away where it's too far away. Look, final thing from me, I just, again, want to say thank you for joining us and sharing, I believe, what has been a lot of powerful things that people will take away. So I appreciate that.
I really appreciate you having me. It's been a really good conversation, and yeah, I've really enjoyed it.